Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ditching the Dorms for Edwards Air Force Base, our virtual option. So here are the requirements to move out of the dorms. You have to be within 6 months of E4 and have at least 3 years in the service. I'll be working on a package with your leadership outside of these requirements. Once you have viewed this class, I will have you email me, Nicole Purcell. My email will be at the end of the slide. And let me know that you completed viewing this slideshow, and then I will send you a Excel budget that I will need you to fill out to the best of your ability with the future move out cost. And then once you send that back to me, we will do a virtual appointment either through email or phone, and then I will send you your certificate along with to your shirt and dorm management for ditching the dorms requirement. All right, so this is a little bit about what we're going to be talking through today. Pretty much the main point is knowing what you're looking for and what the cost of moving out and staying out of the dorms. Pretty much a big thing that has happened at Edwards Air Force Base, being in California and the cost of living being so high, is airmen will move out of the dorms, not be able to financially afford it, and then have to move back into the dorms due to some type of financial issues. So hopefully predicting what that future cost is going to be as best as you can will kind of keep you out of having to move back in or any kind of financial situation. Right, so the Fair Housing Act protects you against all of being discriminated against all these different categories. If you have questions, the Housing Management Office is able to kind of go through if you feel like you've been discriminated against due to any of these categories, but to also include the category of being in the military. If you feel someone has discriminated against you due to the fact that you're in the military, please contact the Housing Management Office and legal to be able to go through those issues. Right, so probably the biggest part is doing research. So moving out isn't necessarily the most easiest task to find the best place besides cost, making sure the area is safe, making sure you're prepared for the drive in and out of base, just different things to kind of think about, along with what you want in an apartment or a house versus what you need in an apartment and house, and what those needs and wants are going to cost you. All right, so here are some communities near Edwards Air Force Base. If you kind of look at that bottom right corner, you will see the mileage for those areas. And so that's just one thing obviously to pay attention to, because with mileage comes gas, and being in California, gas prices are quite high. Another thing to think about with this is depending on when you work. If you are that normal 7:30 to 4:30 shift, you're going to be coming on to base and off of base at the same time as everyone else. So looking at what that time is going to be, how long you have to actually drive to work, what time you need to wake up, is a good option to kind of really think through. And I think it's probably one of the things people least think about. They think the drive is going to be fine and they'll be okay, and then they have to wake up 2 to 3 hours before they have to be to work just to come on to base, especially with the traffic. So these are the mileages next to it, but please be aware that that doesn't mean you will be able to leave your house 45 minutes before work and actually get to work in 45 minutes. So it's just one of those things to think about, especially if you're that 7:30 to 4:30 shift and you're coming on when everybody else is. Right, so there are lots of different choices and different things that you can think about. So here's kind of a list of the things that people think about the most. Most of the time what I am seeing with airmen is they are looking at the rent, which is a good thing to look at. They're making sure they can afford the rent. They're not thinking about utilities. They're not thinking about furniture. They're not thinking about gas. They're not thinking about food. And so that's where it gets a little messy within their budget, especially when we review it. So that's the reason we kind of view a budget with good estimated numbers of what those costs are going to be when you move out. One thing that is a good thing to start thinking about is if you plan on getting a pet, knowing those different types of costs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's just one of those things to really start thinking about now. Alright, so this is kind of those differences between what do you want and what do you need. So really making a list of if everything was an option, what would you want? And then really kind of narrowing those down to what do you need and what would be a nicety. So when you're out there looking for apartments, you're not only getting something, what you need, but getting maybe some niceties if you can find that, but knowing when you're looking what the expectation is and what's more realistic. Alright, so here is, and I will leave this up for just a few seconds just because I want you guys to get those different websites. So depending on where you plan on living, this is websites to look up the crime that happens around that location. I'm going to go on here and I'm going to pull up, and so this is the website crime mapping, which is for the Lancaster area. When you go on to any of these websites, you should be able to go into filters. So what you want to do when you go into filters is locate for usually the last 6 months. Because when you pull these filters up, it will only give you the last week's worth of crime that was reported in that area. And you want a good look at it for the last 6 months. These pictures will show up, and it will tell you the different types of crime. So for this one here in the red, that is an assault. You can click on it, and it will give you a little bit more information here over on the side of what that charge looks like, or what that incident more looked like. And pretty much just to know what's around the area. So in any area there's going to be crime, you're not going to find a location, most likely, that does not have any crime attached to it. If you go and live near more shopping malls or places that have quite a bit of stores around, you're going to find more crime because every crime that gets reported inside the mall is going to be reported for that local area as well. So you just kind of want to be aware of what that crime mapping looks like. One thing to think about is if you plan on getting a dog and going on walking trails, but as you look up crime mapping, there's a lot of robberies in that area, maybe assaults, just different type of things of that where that may occur more often in that area, meaning you won't be able to actually go on those trails and do the walks that you want to do. So it's just kind of one of those things to be aware of what the crime looks like, knowing what kind of security the either apartment or house has. Is that something you're going to have to pay for to add, or is that something that you can maybe negotiate within that lease? All right, so when you find a good property that you think that they may be the place that you want to stay, a couple of things that you should do is go to that location different times of the day, during the week, and also on the weekend. So you want to see what it looks like at night. You want to see what it looks like early in the morning, maybe when you're leaving for work, what that looks like on the weekends, just so you know what you're getting yourself into. Because it may look nice and peaceful during the day, and then not so nice and peaceful at night. Kind of take a walk around the area, see if there's any damage where it looks like people are vandalizing, there's a lot of break-ins, different things of that. Alright, so calculating your cost. So when we pull up a couple of the next slides, some of these numbers were just looked up online through different furniture stores, things that our airmen are telling us as we kind of are doing these appointments with them as they move out. And so just to make sure that you only, one, know your BAH, but know that your BAH is not meant to cover your entire rent and utilities. That's not what it's meant for. A lot of times people can find the right properties to be able to do that and even have money left over, but that's just not what it's meant for. So especially here in California, I think it's harder for airmen to move out into a one-bedroom apartment and that BAH actually cover rent and utilities. So this is calculating the costs for apartments and houses in the different kind of local areas that you see up top. One of the things that kind of, and I will tell you some of these numbers seem lower. This is what was kind of put out to us, that talking to people, these rents, some of them are a little bit higher than what it is. So for instance, the Palmdale, a one-bedroom apartment is usually around that 1100 area. So, but just know if you're finding lower than these numbers, you may need to really look into the property, because what's most likely happening is there's a reason that that apartment or house is way cheaper than what kind of the average is in that area. Right, so here's just a couple of different costs, and I'm going to give you guys a website at the end to be able to look up cost of living, because this is for Rosamond. So if you plan on going into Tehachapi, Palmdale, just different areas, then Rosamond, these numbers may change, and I will give you a website that gives you good numbers that people report to that website for different utility costs. But just kind of looking, you can see the variation. So if you look for a 2-bedroom apartment for electricity, it goes from $55 to $145. When you're coming up with your numbers for your budget, it's a good time to look in the mirror. What kind of person are you? Are you someone that goes and cuts all the lights off before you go to bed or leave your house? Or are you someone that forgets and leaves the lights on, leaves air conditioning on, those type of things? So knowing yourself and your roommate, if you plan on getting a roommate, it's good to know with these type of things when you're averaging those costs out. One thing I will say for water, depending on where you rent, there are a lot of apartment complexes and maybe even some housing areas that do community water bills. A community water bill is the apartment complex will get a water bill for the entire community and will divide it out by the apartments. So you may not use a lot of water, but there may be other people in your community that are using more water, and so your water bill may be higher than expected or vice versa. All right, so here calculated the cost for gas. Right, and so if you look at this, this is the cost of gas is $3.75 a gallon, and you are driving a car at 20 miles per gallon. So if these two things differ, then these numbers are going to differ. This is driving to and from work 5 days a week. So this does not include any weekend trip or any other place that you're going to and from work. And these, we use the city center for Cal City and Tehachapi. So if you're living beyond that city center, the mileage may be a little bit more. It's just kind of thinking. So looking into what gas prices cost and kind of where you're going to be living at is a good thing to start considering. Right, so here are some setup costs, high into the low end. So obviously you usually have first month's and last month's rent, and that is something that a lot of apartment complexes and even rental agencies for houses want up front. So having that upfront money to move out is usually a pretty big deal for a lot of people. So if you haven't started saving, it's definitely the time to start saving. Security deposit. If you plan on having a pet, a lot of times you not only have a pet deposit that may be refundable or may not be refundable. That depends on the place that you're renting at. You a lot of times will get a pet rent, which is usually upwards of about $50 a month added to your rent just because you have a pet. So a lot of these, like the electricity, cable, different kind of deposits to set up utilities, are waived for military or if you set up a direct deposit. So that's one of the things to call the companies, figure out if you're going to have a deposit based on either being military or setting up a direct deposit, if that's something you're willing to do. But if not, knowing what those deposits for that area are going to be. So one of the things, like I said earlier, the furniture is probably the biggest thing left off. So when I do Ditching the Dorms one-on-one budget appointments, I always ask people, how do you plan on furnishing your apartment? And I get the blank stare. So that is one thing you need to really be thinking about, especially if you're moving in with a roommate, who's buying what community furniture. One of the things I tell people is go on the thrift store. There's Airman's Attic. I don't know how they're operating right now, but also on the Facebook and social media pages for the Edwards community and see if you're able to get some things cheaper. Please do not put things such as furniture and decorations on credit. You're going to be paying quite a bit more for that furniture than what you're thinking of based on the interest rate. So that's just one of those things to kind of sit down and really talk to either myself or Mr. Rich Becky. Like I said, we can do virtual appointments for finances, and our emails and phone numbers are at the end. So this is where, like I said, we're talking about a little bit about furniture, furnishings. The rent to own, along with purchasing it on credit, is going to make it more expensive. We can walk through, and so you actually know what you are going to be paying for that furniture, and if that furniture is worth it, especially being military. Our furniture gets moved quite a bit as we PCS, and making sure you're not spending thousands of dollars on a furniture set that's going to get ruined throughout your next PCS, or maybe not make it to your next PCS station. All right, so here's just some costs. Like I said, we just looked this up online through a local furniture store to see about what these costs are. These are some of the cheaper options. And then obviously used, which we kind of looked on the social media thrift store Facebook pages to see what people are selling them for. So what I will tell you is any type of furniture you can get cleaned professionally, and it costs a lot less than having to buy a brand new one. So if you get a couch, and maybe you want it cleaned professionally, you can contact a company, have it cleaned professionally, and it will cost you a lot less than if you had to buy a brand new couch. Kind of the same with mattresses and box springs. So a lot of times people do want those new. You can look at companies and ask if you can get different brand names of box spring and mattresses as a pair. A lot of times they'll sell those together for cheaper. And like I said, you can also get those professionally cleaned, or that might be the one thing you look at to actually pay full price for it. And mattresses and box springs are quite expensive. I don't think people realize that until they start to go buy one. Alright, so some of this seems a little outrageous to have to pay for your own. But there's been quite a bit of airmen who have come in and their apartment or house that they're renting doesn't come with a refrigerator. Most places, unless you're in an apartment complex, will not come with a washing machine and dryer. And the other items outside of the microwave, most places don't come with, period. One of the things I definitely want to tell you is there are so many of the blenders and toasters and microwaves, dishes and cookware if the airman's at it. Please explore that option first. Like I said, I don't know what that operation looks like currently, but please explore that option first before going buying brand new. Ask around where you work, see if anyone has that stuff that they don't need right away. But the washing machine and dryer is definitely something to look into. And make sure with the dryer you know what the hookup is, whether it's gas or electric, before you purchase it to go into a certain property to find out that the hookup is incorrect. Alright, so here's just some costs for groceries. Like I said, I'm going to give you guys a cost of living website. This is another time to be realistic with yourself when you do that budget of how often you're going to eat out. I find a lot of airmen say, well, I don't eat out that much, but on base we only have about 8 to 9 options. So sometimes being on base for quite a while, you get tired of those options, so you can eat home more. But if you're going to go and move into Lancaster, you're going to be passing all of these new places on your way home, tired from a full day of work. It's really easy just to kind of pull into a drive-thru and get yourself something to eat. So not only being realistic about how often you're going to eat out, but what kind of groceries you're going to get. So whether you're a food prepper, whether you like to make meals, whether you eat a lot of junk food, those type of things, really kind of planning that out and being realistic. I'd rather you over put how much you're going to put in all these different categories for expenses than under put it. So this is usually one of the biggest things that I talk to airmen about as they go to move out during the one-on-one appointment. Alright, so calculating the cost to move from the dorms to your new location. So they are a moving van. Usually what I tell people is find someone either in your shop or a place that you work, a friend, someone that has a truck or an SUV that you can pay to help get your stuff from the dorms over to your new location. Just know with the moving vans, regardless of the size that you get, you do have to put gas back in it. So knowing what that costs, making sure that you evaluate that, how long you're going to need that car and truck. So if you are moving out to Tehachapi, what takes you 45 to 50 minutes to drive to, and you're going to have to make two loads, knowing that you're going to need that van or car for 4 to 5 hours. So just making sure that you're really looking at all of those costs and making sure. If you order from a furniture store and you have to get delivery, just know that there's normally a fee for that item, knowing how much that's going to cost, asking those questions up front before you pay for that furniture. Right, so this is really looking at if you plan on getting cable. So I will tell you, 90% of airmen that I do the budget with do not plan on getting cable, but they do plan on getting internet. And so one of the things to look at is you a lot of times will get a contract with cable or internet. That contract is usually for 24 months, so for 2 years. The first year is at a discounted rate, and in the second year it goes up for the exact same service. So that is usually in the contract that you sign, but people don't pay attention to it. They only see what they're going to currently having to pay, and not what kind of that whole 2 years is going to cost. So make sure you look that up. Make sure you know before you purchase internet what your area supports. So if you're buying really fast internet and your area doesn't support it, you're pretty much throwing money out of the window. Right, so this is just kind of an example of one of those contracts where it says, right, so the first 12 months they paid a lot less, and then the second 12 months they had to pay $125 for the next year. So it almost doubled. So what it doesn't say on the slide is the first initial cost was $68 a month, and then it went to $125. All right, so if you really stick to your bare minimums, this is about what you're looking at for startup costs. So even if you think about that as startup costs, this is bare minimums, $4,050. That is quite a bit of money coming out of your pocket right at the get-go, and then you still have to pay for your car payment, insurance, all of those types of things. So making sure that you do have a good savings for moving out. Hopefully you're not looking to use your emergency savings for moving out. Moving out is not an emergency. It is actually just kind of a nicety of what that looks like. So making sure that you save specifically for moving out, especially if you have a couple of months, go ahead and start saving that. And then seeing what you can do, how much this can be held. A lot of times by this point is when people start to look at wanting a roommate or what a roommate may look like, because it will lessen cost. All right, so as we talked about, a roommate sharing rental property. So really looking at living with someone else. So once you send me this, if you send me your budget back and you tell me that you plan on moving in with someone else, I'm going to send you a sample roommate agreement. It's about 5 different pages, and it's for you and your roommate to sit down and really have a full conversation of financial, who's going to pay what. You can actually take that to legal and get it signed and notarized, and it will be a binding legal document. I recommend this just to kind of alleviate any kind of fights or situations, especially if you're moving with a friend. A lot of times people think, well, I know they won't mind, but they don't actually have that conversation, and then it ends a friendship along with some financial difficulties if someone moves out or the other person is stuck paying all of the rents or all of the other payments. So really kind of thinking about the startup costs, like I already talked about furniture, whether you're going to split food, the cost of food, or if you're going to buy your own groceries and your roommate will buy their own groceries. Most of the time on utility bills, there's only one person's name that can be on that bill. So really knowing whose name is going to be on it, however, who is paying what. Like I said, that's where that roommate agreement would really come in handy, especially if the person you're moving in with refuses to pay you and your name is on it. You're going to be the one that it goes on your credit. So if you already have that document that says how much you're going to pay of what, it works out. Right, so a lot of times both people can be on the lease, but if you are moving in with somebody and you're not being put on the lease, and that is okay with the rental property. So most of the time with the rental property, if someone moves in, they want that person's name on the lease so they can do a background check. But if you go and move in with somebody, you don't have to be on the lease. Making sure that that legal document, like I said, says that you have the right to live there and your stuff is there, how much you're paying that other person. So a couple of the questions that are on here: what happens when you deploy? So when you go to out process, housing management will actually look at your lease, and they will make sure that what is called a military clause is in your lease, and that will, if you deploy for at least 6 months, or you PCS, it will allow you to give a 30-day notice to get out of your current agreement. And so that is a 30-day written notice. My recommendation to everyone is to write it, sign it for the date, have the person from the rental agency or your landlord also sign and date it, and both of you have a copy so you know that you gave at least 30-day notice. So another thing to think about is if you are moving in with someone and let's say they deploy or PCS, what is that going to look like if they use their military clause to get out of that apartment? Are you prepared for 1 or 2 months to have to pay all of those bills by yourself? So really having an emergency savings set up for that type of situation if you're going to move in with more than one person. So if you're out looking at a bunch of different properties, you may want to hold one because you really like it, but you still want to view the other ones. You're not necessarily ready to sign a lease. So there are things called a holding deposit where you will pay the landlord or rental property agent, like it says on that slide, $100 to $200 to hold that apartment, meaning they will not show that property to anybody else for a set amount of time. Okay? And this will depend on if you get that money back or not. Will just depend on the agreement between both. I've seen it both ways, where if you decide that you do not want that apartment, they won't give you the money back. But if they turn you down due to credit and different things, they will give you the money back. Or if you move in and they put it toward your rent. It's just one of those things to make sure that you understand all of that and make sure you get it in writing. All right, so these are some of the things that they will want when you go to apply for a rental property. So a lot of times they want to see your LES, bank statements. They may ask for references. I haven't seen this as much with military members. So a lot of times they know that they can call the base if they're having some kind of issues. But they will want to do a credit check, and a lot of times you will get charged for this. So this is usually in that application fee. Some application fees are waived for different locations for military members, so it's a good thing to ask. The website here at the bottom, that dre.ca.gov, is the tenant landlord right. So I would actually save that, print it out, and make sure that you know what your rights are as a tenant and what the landlord has to do and what their rights are. With your credit check, please be aware that there is a lot of information on your credit report. So there's your name, your full social, any place you've ever lived in, any place you've ever gotten credit, and any place you've ever worked. So you don't want to be giving the rights to someone who you are suspecting maybe isn't as trustworthy. So making sure that it's a company, it's a trustworthy person, that you are giving permission to pull that credit report. So this credit report, you will not, is what is considered a soft hit because you are not asking for credit. They are looking to see if you are a trustworthy person. So you will not, your credit score will not get dinged in this report being pulled. All right, so what is in a lease agreement? So I will tell you a lease agreement is probably the longest document you will see. I've seen upwards of 150 to 200 pages with a leasing agreement. I think the smallest one I have seen is 75 pages. So a lot of times when you make an appointment with someone to go ahead and sign your lease, that first page is the document that's most important for most people. It says when the rent, how much the rent is, when it's due, and the security deposits, and when you can move in. But you definitely want to make sure you look at all of the lease agreement. Most places have you sign either every rule or have you signed at the bottom of the page saying that you have read it. What you can do and what I recommend, before you have the lease signing appointment, ask to have the lease in advance, and that way you can look over it. You can have maybe your supervisor help you look over it. You can take it to housing management office and our legal to look over it to make sure that it is a normal looking lease and there isn't anything that you don't understand that you're signing and agreeing to, or there's something that's in it that maybe normally isn't in it, and then you can kind of work through the different parties and also making sure that military clause is in there. Right, so these are the things that usually make up that lease agreement. And you definitely want to make sure any type of rules that they have that they want you to follow, how the rent is to be paid, when it's due, how much it is, when that late charges happen. So make sure that you understand all of that so you are not going and paying it on the 6th of the month because there was a holiday on the 4th and then you get charged $100, $200 for paying it on the 6th. So I will tell you, at our last duty station, we could not pay by cash. And so if we paid by cash, we actually got charged £15 for paying our rent in cash. And that was just something that was in the lease agreement that we didn't really pay attention to, and it was just easier 1 month to do that due to a couple holidays and vacation. And then we had to pay that fee. So the military clause, I will send that to you once you tell me you have viewed this video. That way you have the exact wordage of what that should be. But knowing, right, so those are the rules down there. The PCS, retirement, separation, or deployment, along with the deployment is at least 90 days. That is the only thing that it covers. So it does not cover if you get forced to move back on base by leadership. So I've seen a couple rental companies that will work with airmen if that kind of situation happens. and other ones who do not. And then they have to move back on base due to the recommendation by leadership, but still financially obligated to pay their rent at this apartment complex. So just make sure that you know that. And like I said, it still does require that 30 days written notice. So one thing I would like to say about the Service Member Civil Relief Act, that is what the military clause is in. That's what protects service members' rights. Another part of this, just kind of from a financial standpoint, is if you had any credit or debt that you had before you joined the military and the interest rate is higher than 6%, it legally has to be lowered to at least 6% or under. So it's any kind of debt or credit that you had before you joined the military. Once you join the military, you are no longer protected under that because of the financial briefings that you receive and kind of resources that you're able to have. So just if you have questions about that, that is another thing that we can talk about in the one-on-one budget appointment, because one of the pages of the Excel sheet does ask you to put any kind of debt that you have and what the interest rate is. Alright, so those landlord responsibilities, that website I gave you, like I said, knowing what your rights are and what is required of the landlord, making sure that you know, most importantly, especially here in California, what is considered an emergency maintenance repair. So if your AC in the middle of summer cuts off and it's not working, is that like how long does maintenance have to get to be able to work that or to come into that maintenance issue? And if they don't, what procedure do you need to follow to get things fixed in a timely manner? So your security deposit that you will have to pay. So a lot of times this is money that you pay up front. Usually about $500 is around the average of what I've been seeing. And it is to cover any cost of any damage that happens to their property on move out. So if you don't damage their property at all, you will get that fully back on when you move out. If you damage anything and they charge you, they will take that as security deposit versus giving it back to you. So there's a couple of rules kind of on the side for California. What I will tell people every single time is you will get usually the first 3 days when you move in to be able to report any damages that are currently at the property. I would take those 3 days, the whole 3 days, go through each room and make sure any ding, crack, stain on the carpet is documented within that property and given back to the leasing agent to understand that that damage was done before you moved in. Just because a lot of times stains and just different things that people don't pay that much attention to, I don't think it's a big deal, and then you get blamed for it and it can cost quite a bit. I would always take photos of what that damage looks like. Make sure you send it to the property manager, that way it is time and date stamped that you did that within that 3-day time period. Right, so if you plan on moving out or breaking the lease and it's not under that military clause and or you did not give that proper 30 days notice, just make sure that you know there's a lot of fees to go along with that cancellation, and they can legally hold you to paying that rent for the remainder of that contract. When you go to move out, make sure that you are changing your address on your VRED, so it's your virtual record of emergency data, with the bank, mail, any of your creditors. That way you actually get your statements and those type things. It doesn't keep going to an old address, along with updating either MPF or your CSS of what your new address is going to be. And also you want to make sure that you call your utilities and let them know that you are moving out and to take that account out of your name, because you will still get billed if someone moves in afterwards if you have not called and canceled. Right, so renter's insurance. A lot of times people do not have renter's insurance. So this is to not only protect your stuff if something happened, like a fire or flood. It protects your stuff inside that property, but it also protects you if you damage their property. So renter's insurance is usually pretty cheap on a normal size apartment or property. It's about $10, $15 at max a month to cost, and you can get this through wherever you are to get your car insurance or different insurance agencies. And a lot of times it will cover you up to a certain amount. So for instance, an old apartment that I stayed in, it covered up to $500. So when we moved out, there was stains in the carpet. They charged us $300. We put a claim to the insurance company. That insurance company gave us $300 back, and then we got our full security deposit back. And we paid a family of 4 $11 a month for that renter's insurance. So currently, if you look at your LES, you get about $7.80 in BAH while you are in the dorms. That is to get renter's insurance. Not only while you're in the dorms, but any place that you rent. All right, so this is a required slide to show you. So for absentee ballots for military, you can vote where you are your home of record as an absentee voter. If you go on FVAP, so fvap.gov, you can sign up you can register to vote. And then also you will be able to do, depending on what state you vote in, it will let you know how to turn that absentee ballot in. So Airman and Family is an installation voting rep. However, every squadron has a squadron voting rep if you need help with that information. All right, so making sure that you, like I kind of said at the beginning, hopefully moving out, you're not using your emergency savings. Realistically, I know most people do use a savings account. They have one savings account, and that's what they use for everything. But making sure that you really do have a savings account, an emergency savings account, and what I always tell military members is financial experts will say having 3 to 6 months of financial expenses and our income in emergency savings. For military members, I usually tell them a next day air ticket home to wherever any family member or person you would want to go and visit if something happened. Right, so next day air ticket, if something happened to your car, set of tires, car emergency, those type of things, and making sure that you know what that cost would look like in California. So California is higher cost of living. Car repair is higher in California also. And then usually a third bad thing that would happen in a short notice or short span of time. Along with an emergency savings, you should also have a goal-getter savings, so whether that's buying a house, going on a vacation, buying a new car, those type of things that you're saving for. Hopefully retirement accounts. If you do not invest in TSP, hopefully you're doing a different type of investment for your retirement. That is one thing that we will talk about during the one-on-one if I don't see any kind of indication that you're giving to a retirement fund. And then usually the last one that I say, or another one, is a fun account. So vacations, something you really enjoy to do. If you like to fix cars, buy shoes, those type of things, you have a savings account so you're not spending everyday kind of money on those items when you want to buy them. All right, so this is a little bit about what the budget will look like. So it is an Excel sheet. It has 5 tabs at the bottom. The last tab, I do not require anybody to fill out. But the first one is income, the second one is expenses, the third one is debt. So those first 3 you are required to fill out. And you can either use the current or projected. So use the projected column, go all the way down. So this is where with your income, you will put your BAH, you will take out the meal deduction, and then you will put rent, kind of those expenses, food costs of when you move out. And then I will be able to show you on the first page, we'll show whether you have a surplus or a deficit. And then obviously if you have a deficit, we're going to need to look at some things. If there's nothing in the budget to change, there may be the recommendation for you not to move out right now currently due to having a deficit monthly. But your final say will lie with your squadron and the dorm management team of what that looks like. And we'll kind of keep working on through your budget. The third tab is for your debt. So I asked for you to, your creditors, interest rate, how much you currently owe, and then how much you're going to be paying monthly. So that's that minimum cost monthly. TSP, so there's the website. Like I said, if you are not doing either TSP and or another retirement account, that is something we will talk about during the one-on-one appointment, just to kind of get you either started or the information needed to be able to start a retirement account. Right. So there's some information about the blended retirement system. I threw this slide in because I have come across multiple airmen who do not fully understand the blended retirement system. So while we're already having to do kind of a one-on-one budget appointment, this would be a good time for you to ask if you have questions about the blended retirement system. All right. All right, so housing management office will be a part of your out processing paperwork. You will have to go and see them. Like I said, a lot of times they want to see your lease. They will go through the crime mapping stuff with you. If you already looked at it, you can explain to them that you've already looked at it, but they want to make sure that you're on your best way of moving out and understanding everything. Right, so here's some information. So there is the number and the Mr. Lynch's name. So if you want to email him, he's in Global. For the housing management office, my name and email address, so you can email me and let me know. So Nicole Purcell, that you viewed this video and that you are ready for your budget. And then our PFC, Personal Financial Counselor, Mr. Rich Becky, that's his phone number that you can reach him on, and he can do virtual appointments with you if you have further questions. Thank you for viewing it. Like I said, once you are done viewing this, please email me, Nicole Purcell, to get your budget and the other documentation, and we will go from there from doing the virtual appointment, and then your certificate that will go to your shirt in the door management office. Thank you.